Okay, so I'm just going straight to the screen today. I am still recovering from a hospital visit from a really bad case of poison ivy. I'm really allergic to it, and I got splashed on some water after washing off a lawnmower, and it's all over the place, and literally I had to be rushed to the emergency room. Everything's fine, but I was literally slurring words and the whole works from this. It really affects me more than most people you would think. I have to get shots and Medipack for steroidal treatment for this, and sometimes I have to get several shots. But anyway, we're back on track. I am going to do the second part to toys, and we're just, as I said, shooting straight to the screen. I'm still sticking to the high dollar ones first. We are going to go into the next one. I'm going to have two more. I've already decided it'll be 4 of these for now. This one's going to stick on, more high dollar ones, but as I did in the first one, I'm trying to pick ones that you might actually find. I've eliminated tens of thousands of different toys that chances are you're never going to see. Some of these you may not see the exact toy, but I wanted you to see the style and how they are made, as well as to know a little bit about the company that made them, because certain companies make toys that almost every toy from that company is worth some good money. So just keep that in mind. Now, this one's a tin toy, so don't pay any attention to the tin toy, but it's a Poppy. This is a Japanese brand, and these sell just because they're Japanese. And most anything Poppy from like 80s and before sells for decent money. $50 to $100 for most anyone that I run across. They have to be the original Japanese ones, but they're still out there. They still show up. This is a perfect example of one right now. So, anyway, let's move on from here. I just want you to see what they look like, basically, on this one. Any of these heads like this, this is basically a tin Poppy Shogun Warrior-styled figure. So, and we're going to go into those in the next video. The next video will have much cheaper ones, but I want you to see some of these expensive ones, because I have bought some of these at even auctions, and I've spent $100 or more bucks on some of these, and just watched everybody just passing by, opening bid, on a big box sometimes of things. This one here, I've gotten one of these actually not too long ago, and these are pretty new on top of that. So Ron English did a lot of toys. He did a lot of the New York City Comic Cons and things like that. These are figures that would have been sold there. These would have been fairly expensive there. Most of this kind of stuff sells out at the show, so the only time you can get them is at the show. So secondary market is huge on these, and I do mean huge. So anyway, oddball figures. If it doesn't look quite right, chances are it might be worth something. So just keep that in mind. And this is just a knockoff. This is an unlicensed item as far as I can see. I haven't looked into a whole bunch in this. I know who Ron English is. I've seen many of his pieces. I do admire a lot of the stuff that he does. And some of these people that you see or I'm showing you is part of the reason we're switching to do toys, because the market is there. I will pay the money to set up at the, the local Detroit Con, or we might go down to Dragon Con in Atlanta. We do have friends that live in the city and who do Dragon Con religiously. They make costumes, they cosplay, the whole work. So anyway, let's move on to the next one here. Now, this one I'm here, don't pay any attention to the figures. What you're looking at is the stand. What they are sitting on, you can run into, and I have run into this many times. I actually had this as a child. You would cut off proof of purchases. This was the first, or I believe this was the first one. The first promo that you could do was save up so many of the UPC, or the little round proof of purchases, off the back of the cards. And that's why you see a lot of these cards cut. And then you send those in, and they would send you a free stand. And this is the free stand. This has the figures and all, too. They might have done better to check them out, because, the Han Solo could have been a variety piece. It could have been marked Lily Ledden or Letty on some of the legs. And I'm going to show you some of those, too. I did show you one in the other video, but you got to pay attention to this stuff. This should be something you should center on, because these show up all the time, and they're always good money. I can't say all the time on the stands itself, but the figures I see all the time. And not everyone's worth a ton of money, but it doesn't take but one or two to get a couple $100 profit instantly, off of these things, or even $1,000 in some cases. So just keep that in mind. Let's see, let's move on here. Now, again, they don't have to be old. This is Cloverfield. Now, I'm sure some people know what the movie is. I wasn't a big fan of this one. The second one I thought was a little better, honestly. But anyway, this is a newer toy, too, and it still sells in this condition. It does sound effects in the whole works. It sounds just like the movie. I've seen this one in person, so they're not super, super rare, but they're They're very hard to come by. You'll see these at garage sales, believe it or not. You know, and I know that sounds crazy, but you might see this at a garage sale for $200 or $300 and think, who's going to pay that for it? It's a $600 plus. On a bad day, it might go for $450 to $475. You know, and I've had one of these. You know, and I literally got it from a picker. I spent $50 on a box of what he thought was junk. It wasn't even in the box. I didn't even have it in the box. It doesn't matter on some of these toys. And again, the ages do not matter either. Now, I've had some talk on these. I've showed some of these. These are Remco. These are the cheaper versions. Just bring them back up to your attention. This one actually has the marking on it. I believe I showed some of these too, but pay attention to this marking. All-Star Wrestling marked on anything. LJN, Remco, 1980s. That's what you're looking for on any of these toys like that. And usually you can get them pretty cheap. I wouldn't say you'd find them with the clothing, but sometimes they show up that way. Now, this is a import version. I think this is the Spanish, or it could be Portuguese. I am not 100% sure. I believe this is the Spanish, the Mexico version. I just squeezed the legs, blah, blah. Let's see here. Right arm. Okay, some of these have action now. Superpowers. Now, this is, I always tell you, look up stuff. Go open a window right now and type in superpowers. Just click the sold ones. Don't mess with anything else. And again, if you don't want to learn this, don't bother looking stuff up. But, you know, this is to help you. This is to cut off your time on worrying about these. These are all 80s dated toys. All these superpowers. You know, I've had dozens and dozens and dozens, maybe hundreds of these in the last 2 years. Not this toy specifically, but from the same line. And they always sell fairly well. So you might get $1 into a toy, and even some of the cheaper ones from the series go for $10-15 too. This is a very popular series. They didn't make a ton of them, but again, this is the foreign version of it. So this one goes for much higher than the American version. I think the American version is like 60 or 70. And unless you know that there are two versions of this, chances are you're just going to sell it as the cheapo one. And no one's going to tell you, I guarantee it. If you put up a toy wrong on eBay, it's going to be sold before you even realize that you sold a variety or a version of it that was worth way more. I can guarantee you, no one's going to tell you on the toys. They will just buy it, you know, take it home and resell it or whatever they're going to do with it, but you will not be told like in other areas. I've just never had that happen. I've never seen it. I've heard the same stories from many, many people. No one ever tells you they want the toy because it's that rare. They're not going to tell you it's rare. Now this is, don't pay so much attention to the names or any of this stuff up here. I'm not going to even begin to pronounce them. I took Japanese history and we had to learn many, many Japanese words. I know how to pronounce most of them, but I don't want to butcher it, because I'm still not that great. It was just, you know, a 4-month class, but anyway, the style is what you're looking for. Literally the style. These funky, multicolored, I don't care if these are new, old, or indifferent, they always sell for high dollar. You can see the dollar price on here. This is a used one. They came in rack cards with just a clear bag around them, and that's it. And I've seen many of these, and I go to some of these shows and stuff. I've been to some of the Comic Cons. You know, our goal at one time, still our goal is to set up at some of these and do some of these, because once you get toy lines out there and get your name out, and in fact, here's some right here. Now, these are restored. Somebody's rebagged these, I think. They'll repaint them sometimes, and then they'll rebag them and then sell them that way too. But there's a ton of them. Here's another one right here even. So anyway, there's a ton of these, and you'll see these mixed in with Godzilla, like Toho Godzilla, Toho. That's one of the main brands from like the 1984, 85 through to like the 90s, and even into the 2000. I think the 2001 version or 2002, I think, came out of Godzilla is still Toho. They may still be even after that. I just don't mess with them much after that. I'll still buy them if they're dirt cheap and just throw them in a lot. But anyway, you can see the prices on here, $638. Now, I've had talk on these too now. These are the rubber versions. There's not a lot that are worth a ton of money, but Big Boss Man, I've always sold very, very, very high. This one I think sold for $600. It wasn't $999, I don't believe. And I believe the average price on these, if the paint's worn, is, oh geez, there's several versions of them too, so just keep that in mind too. I don't know which version that is, but this one here is the original stick holding one. I mean, they've replaced, I got it off for just a second. They've replaced the stick. You know, you'll see reproductions of it too, because these are real easy to cast, those kind of things. I could cast reproductions on even the Star Wars guns here in the house if I really wanted to. You never know the difference. That's how good, once you've done a bunch of casting, you can get them down really good, no bubbles, anything. We have vacuum chambers and all that. So these parts are recast, so keep that in mind. Don't think that it's all original. Don't get your hopes up at any time on these toys, because they're... Hang on, looks like I'm getting a bunch of offers in. Because the toys are recast. Even the rubber can be recast. And I've seen some fake ones of these from Japan that were newer, in the last 5 years. So anyway. But this one, literally, I think in the $600 range. More offers. Several more offers. Okay, let's see here. Now this one I'm showing because it has, it's a 20 back. This was one of the offers for the Boba Fett. And I've talked about the Boba Fett. Let's zoom in on this one here. This is the offer that you see. Some of these, I think, had a sticker or something over it, and you had to peel the sticker to see what the offer was, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a long time, but I'm almost sure there was a gum sticker over this that you could peel off, if I remember right. And it just showed like coming or freebie, open to see or something like that. But I just wanted to show you that. Here's what the top of these things look like. Toy Graders is one of the biggest ones, if not the biggest. But that's not important to this. I just wanted to see the freebie. There are a lot of freebies. So if you ever run across a Star Wars figure sealed in a bag, just a clear bag with nothing even printed on it, don't ever open those. Don't check them out. Don't do anything. Take them home and look them up first. Don't ever open up any kind of clear plastic bag on anything, even if it's guns or something, because, yeah, it looks like I'm getting a bunch of offers. We put a few things on sale the other day that have been up we've had for, 2 years or so up. So, again, we get, 20,000 free listings, so I'm not too worried about it. It brings the cost down horrendously, and we get the boxes. I ended up selling my eBay boxes to other people and stuff like that, too, to get some of my money back out of it. But anyway, let's move on to the next one here. Here's just another one. It's getting a little annoying. Let me move on to this here. Now, here's just another one of these. Now, these aren't even that well cast in my book, but they sell because they're odd. They're Japanese. Again, I'm not going to go ahead and try to pronounce all of that. It would take me a moment here because I'd have to pronounce them one at a time to make sure I was doing it right. Now, this person put an opening bid of $9.99 in this one. He knew what he had. He knew this was going to go high because these all go high. Some of these date back to the 60s, the mid to late 60s, so just keep that in mind. Doesn't have to have a box, can be loose, doesn't matter if he has any weapons or anything with it. These always go. I do run into these every couple of months, a couple of these. Sometimes I've been lucky enough once a year, twice a year sometimes, to get a box with a bunch of these in it, 6, 7, 8 of these, and then you're walking away. Even if you spend a couple $100 on that box, you're walking away with a couple grand is what I did last time. So, these are few and far between, a couple times a year, but still, if you don't know what they are, you're not going to put out the big bucks. I would have spent a couple $100 more on that. If I had to spend $500 to get that box, I would have done it. Now, this is another one of those oddball things, supposed to be Mickey. These are newer, but again, garage sale. Kids are, bought these 5-10 years ago. They're going off to school. It's not important. They don't, didn't realize the prices went up. Some of these are newer stuff, like this one's here is newer. Jason Freeney. Now, there's a bunch of designer toys that are selling like storms right now. All these shows have been kicked off. Comic-Con and Dragon Con have turned into a mass marketing ploy now by all the huge companies. It used to be just small-end stuff. Another one. Used to be just small-end stuff, but now it's this big marketing company. So the small wigs who get in there and you get lucky enough to get a table and you set up at these, your chances of making some big money are huge these days. So, when you go to a show, you sell out, boom, you're set probably from that point on. You'll get a market. You might get picked up by one of the national companies or one of the bigger regional companies, the small-time makers, and then you're set. I know a friend who personally just does toys now. That's all he does, and he makes them himself. He's got a couple that he had, professional molds done from a Kickstarter, and then he produces them in quantity, overseas. But making the actual full-fledged permanent metal molds for these is what costs the most. Most people just do them at home or in the garage if they can, or will pay somebody to do a professional quality local mold. There are some molders that do, resin and stuff like that too. So anyway. Now, I talked about variety. Now, I'm just showing you this one here. These are 3. Now, if you didn't know the fact that that brown hair is a little different than the other ones, you'd probably pass it right on by. Don't worry about that it's graded or anything else like that, but these are 3 different versions. Even the 2 on the ends are different. The faces are slightly different. The painting's different on the 2 on the ends, but they're marked Taiwan and Hong Kong, so some of the markings on it mean a big difference. They were made in many different countries, and there's different versions of most of these style like this. So again, don't just sell them off thinking it's just standard Luke if you find one. The standard Luke's not worth a lot of money, but when you go in and find the varieties, that's where the money's at. These 3 sold for $550. That's a little high from what I see, but they still do show up. So and here's, another example of the He-Man. Now, those books on the right, I've run into without figures around, and sometimes even seen them, at thrift stores and Goodwill and even Salvation Army, Savers in the past. I've gotten a stack of those books before. Those sell for $5 or $10 too. Some of them sell for 30 or better, depending on what it came from. If it's a rare toy, the books are almost impossible to find. So, and even the weapons you can sell too. This one sold for $600. It's a variety version of it too. So anyway, I'm not going to go into the variety on this one. There's a ton of different He-Man. You could do a whole video or 2 just on He-Man. Now, this one here, these are copies. These are like bootlegs as far as I can see. It says they're new. They were definitely not the designs are not hand done. They are done by a machine. I've looked at these closely because I remember the original ones. Wrestling Buddies. Now, they're saying custom or not custom. Somebody's mass producing these because there's many of these by the same person. So just keep that in mind that some of these... technically, you get in trouble for selling this one. I'm not going to say things. None of my business. I don't really care. It's not hurting me at all. People like these custom or these knockoffs, for this kind of stuff because they do them in characters that you can't get normally. So anyway, let's move on to the next one here. Now, this one is a Yoshitomo Nara. Now, this one here, there's a bunch of these different kinds, but this one is a nice one. $800. I thought this was cute, honestly. The wife even liked it too. So, they're good figures. These are just random oddball ones too. So it doesn't have to be a name brand. It doesn't have to be something you've known. This is more along the lines of something that I would be more interested in actually creating because they're easier to create and they go for a ton of money. So you just need to get yourself a name and you get your stuff known a little bit to start off from there too. So anyway, $800 on that one. Now, Kaws. Now, these sell. Do yourself a big plus. Open up that window again and type in Kaws and toys. You're going to see them all across the board. Now, this is the 3-piece set. They sell individually. You're going to run into these, believe it or not, because there's so many of these made, but they're such a hot item right now. This is, once you get out of the Star Wars, which are most of the top high-dollar selling toys, in the entire toy section on eBay, you start running into these, and Kaws always sell. So do yourself a favor and look these up, in another window. So this one was $600. Now you can sell some of these individual ones for $3 easy, depending on the day of the week, literally. So let's move on here. Now, I really liked this one. I know it's bizarre. Most people wouldn't think much of it. But there's a bunch of lines of these toys, and I like a lot of these toys. I like the insider or outsider artwork. This one here, the wife even actually liked. These are just basically, I believe she actually made this by hand, if I'm not mistaken. Now, you can mold the face and then stitch around it depending on how you cast the face. So this is something that, somebody could do literally if they wanted to. It looks like she's hand-stitched it, too. So for $630 for something like that, that's a real nice one, I think. I don't remember if it says what it is. Gallery. Resin acrylic paints. Yes, she did this by hand, it looked like. Hardwood chips, walnut hulls, and cotton, yeah. So yeah, this is a one-off, and I do these. I do one-off stuff too. So don't get me wrong; these things are good. So, and you could run into some bizarre-looking thing like this. Not necessarily this one, but don't pass on these bizarre ones. Look them up, or at least give yourself some idea. If they're $1 or something, I would have bought this all day long, even for $5, just because it's bizarre. That's what you're looking for. They don't have to be something you know specifically. Now, this is a foreign version. Now, there's several versions of this Tall Toys is the New Zealand version. There's actually a Pally Toys, which is the UK version, and I believe you can get them in Canada too. Now, there was some versions that are only available in some of these just out of the Sears catalog for many toy lines as well. Battlestar Galactica had some specific ones, and I think Lucifer is the name of the evil dude that had the big clear dome on his head. Somebody will probably holler me out to that. I've had him. I've had most of those, but there were some specific ones that you could only get from Sears catalog from the original Battlestar Galactica toys from the 70s. And there was even a mail away. I had a gold Cylon that was really rare. I wished I would have kept it. They still show up now, but when I first had it and sold it, I got like 125 or 130 out of it. And it was a free toy, mind you, when I was a kid. And no one had seen it at that point. That's a long time ago, decades ago. Nowadays, they're not common, but they do show up still. But anyway, a lot of people aren't aware of these mail-away stuff or the exclusives only from one area or one catalog. So that's why none of this you can take for granted. Now, don't pay any attention to the figure itself. I just Tonner. Type in Tonner. Open that window again and do some of your own research here while I'm talking. Tonner dolls sell just even for the body. Now, those custom figures like I've shown you, we're going to show you a few more. I'm going to show you Rick Grimes from The Walking Dead in a minute. You can buy Tonner bodies, basically. I don't know if they're technically an original Tonner, but I'll buy a trashed out Tonner doll any day of the week for 10, 20, 30 bucks. Because even the parts on these things sell for a ton of money. This one went for $7.49 because it's a Tonner. And you can buy them, and I think I have one in here, so we're going to go on, and maybe it's next, maybe not. I'm showing you varieties too here. So again, this is a variety. There's a dull version of this, flat finish, and then there's a glossier version of this exact same figure made at the exact same time. One's harder to get than the other, which is this one here, and it's sold for $600 because of that. Plus, it's graded very high. So anyway, let's move on to the next one. Star Wars toy, if you're not aware. Empire Strikes Back, Medic Droid. Again, varieties. Let's zoom in on this one here. You've got to know your head sculpts, too. There's 3, 4, maybe even 5 different head sculpts on hand. And I know the difference nowadays, just because I've seen so many of them, and I look at them at shows and things until I realized I could tell the difference on my own without doing it. So that's what you need to know on these, because it makes the world of difference in this figure. The standard one's $10 maybe 30 or 40 with the gun. $578 because of the small head version of this. It just depends on where they were made. I'm not sure if somebody made 2 different casts for 2 different companies and they didn't realize they were different. Whatever the case may be, I'm sure there's a story behind it. I'm sure if you really wanted to know, you could look it up and find it. But again, the Star Wars guides I find do not show that in it. Yeah, I got a bunch of offers. Now this one here is just an oddball one, just to show you this is a newer item. These sell all the time. Not just this specific item, but all these weird, bizarre toys almost always sell. And they have to be like a vinyl, like a soft, flexible vinyl. Those are the ones you want. So anyway, just bizarre is good. This is $575 worth of bizarre here. LJN. Now here I've talked about putting less information in your title. That's going to make some of these move instantly on some of these. $750 for these 2 figures. All he has is LJN WWF. That's all you need in the title, because everybody's going to look to see what's in it. So even if it's not a rare figure, they're going to want to know what's in that lot. I guarantee it. The collectors about these are mad nutso about it. Don't blame them. You want something, you want it. And, they look at this. This guy probably had a ton of views right off the bat the second he put this thing up there, I bet you. Just because of that. Just because, everybody wanted to see what he had. So that's why I say less information is better many times in some categories. Obviously, don't ever do it in clothes, books, and things like that, video games. But in toys and vintage and collectible, you're going to pique their interest beyond belief just by putting LJN. He's got no date. He's got nothing. I believe he listed it in a vintage section. Well, not even really that. It's just listed in toys. So unless you look at it, you're not going to know. But LJN, WWF are the ones to get. They're not all worth money. There's probably 100 or more of these different figures from this set. And there's only a few that go for really some insane money. Most of them aren't huge. Andre the Giant, I'll show you one in a little bit. I've sold many of him, and they go very well, too. I've always liked Andre the Giant. I remember when they were on TV. I wasn't a wrestling fan or anything, but Princess Bride came out, and I liked that movie, too. Now, there's not many Ninja Turtles that are worth a ton of money. This just happens to be one of them. Condition is awesome. I put this up here because I still run into boxed Ninja Turtle toys from the 80s now because they were dumped on the market because they weren't worth that much money. And even still, most of them aren't worth much money, but some of them are, and this is an example of it. So do your homework. Don't pass on them because they're Ninja Turtles. Don't pass on them at all. Even if there's bins of these, and I've seen bins of these in the last 3 or 4 years several times. Now, again, varieties and differences of them. This is one of the last 17. Last 17, you're going to see that listed in these. But you just see the R2, and if you didn't look at it closely, you would miss, because this one has a little compartment that opens up. Let me see if you can see it in here. It's like a spring-loaded thing on it. You can't really see it. But the lightsaber shoots up from the side in this one here, and only this one. So you just got to know, to look out for it. So you might just pass on, a $554 toy because you think it's just the standard R2-D2 that's only worth $20 or $30. This one's really nice condition, too. 85 is pretty good on AFA, so anyway. I am nuts on toys. I grew up with these toys. 83 was about the time I stopped playing with stuff like this. I was 10, 12, or 12, 13, I guess, at that point. There wasn't a lot on TV and stuff to do as kids, so anyway. This is another one of those Sears things. Now, you could run across this without that sticker on it. So you might not know what this is, but Hasbro. This is a Hasbro toy. Sears. This will sell. There's very little markings on it to tell you that it's a vintage G.I. Joe. You might just think it's some generic piece. $610. I've run into this. I've gotten big lots of Joe stuff, and this has been in there. There are some pieces, like the Reliant or something of G.I. Joe, or Destro items that sell very, very, very well. This is probably one of the prima ones here. But I talked about this one here too, and what I should have done in the last video was show you the difference. Somebody else called that out to me, instant messaged me, and I just thought I would touch on it here. Now, this is the ding toe one, too, dented toe. This is the one that they thought, this is what he was supposed to look like. All they had was a picture. The face is pretty correct, but this is what he should look like. So it's a huge difference. He was a short, small, red coat. They had a black and white photo from what I understood, and that's why they made the wrong figure. This one's sealed. It's in like mint condition almost, so that's why this one still went for so much. And 21 back is very well liked. That's one of the better backs in these. But let's move on here. Again, I say mail-away bags. This is just made in Hong Kong. That's all it says in the bag. I've seen some that didn't have even that on it that are legit. Now, again, this is a mail-away version from Sears, actually. So I think you bought a Sears toy and you could mail away. I don't think it's going to say mail-away number. Only includes and Han Solo. Let's see here. Any other information? Sears brown mailer box. No, unfortunately, it doesn't go into the detail on these, but I'm sure this one is in my book. They're literally, we're mailed in brown boxes. The address would probably be on the other side. He's just not showing you the address. But again, anything in a bag's worth money like this. Any of these vintage original ones, even if there's nothing printed on it, don't think that somebody just sealed it in there to keep it in good condition. Chances are that was actually a mail-away. And I've still found mail-away still in sealed bags, just like this person did. Still to this day, every couple months or so, I'll find, not necessarily Star Wars, but most toy lines up into the 80s and even into some of the 90s. Even some of the newer, lines of Lucasfilm limited editions of the Star Wars, from the 90s through the 2000s still had mail-away ones. So it's been a practice they've done, because you had to buy more toys just to get the free one, and the profit they were making off you buying these extra toys was a huge profit. So who cares if they gave away a toy to get you to buy a dozen or 10 figures or 5 figures or whatever it took to get the mail away. There was usually a coupon or a card, and you had to take proof of purchases for many things. That's why I still run across the cards cut with the corners cut off. I used to do that. People would rip off just the coupons from in the store because they weren't stealing the figure, and walk off with those and then mail those in too. That was a big thing. So we'd run into the store to buy a figure, and someone's already stolen the proof of purchase off the back. So anyway, now I've talked about just these coins. This is just the coin from the Powers of the Force. Here's some Tonner dolls. Hot Toy style too, but hang on, I think I actually have those opened. But these Power of the Force coins, this is Yak-Man. Now, the figure itself is worth some money. This did sell for this. Now, this is the highest weight I've ever seen. because there is a fake one of these, so just keep that in mind. There's a repro, so if you get a repro one, you know you're screwed because it's really not worth much. But the original is worth money, and he's got it on a scale. You can tell the weight on these. That's the difference from what I understand, is the metal that they used is a special combination. Not just anybody could cast one of these. So anyway, this one here I brought up because I've talked about reproductions. This isn't a reproduction technically. They redid it for GameStop. Somebody could scrupulously get off that GameStop part or put a sticker over it or something and try and fool you because it's made to look like the old one. So just keep that in mind. And not just this one. There's a ton of different ones that are rehashes of the vintage toys. So don't go in a frenzy until you've looked up the maker, the marks on it, or anything else like that. Most of them should have the correct date on it, copyright-wise, because they have to do that. But this is a specific small lettering version too, so anyway. Here's another one of these. This one I've had many times, so just keep an eye out. This is Andre the Giant. He sells in it. In most conditions, he'll sell fairly well. It did sell for, I think, $1,000 on this one. Oh, actually, I think it was like $600. It was a best offer taken on that. So the opening price was $1,000. Let's move on to the next one. Again, oddball stuff. There's a whole line of these. This one's an older one. I don't remember the year these came out. 80s. Yeah, there's like a cow ones that's from another line. Mesa Verda, I think. Cows of Musa Verda or something along that line. I've had those too. This one, there's even dolls that look like, pigs and horses and dinosaurs and things like that. There's a very famous poodle, like a Barbie-style doll, too, that goes for a ton of money. I don't have her name off on the tip of my tongue right now, but these always sell for us as well, too. And I've had some from the series, too, even. I usually get them in a big lot of stuff. This is, like, rarest of the rare, and people recast the guns, and I think the gun was used later on for Elf or something, if I'm not mistaken, too. They were repainted and made to look a little different there, but anyway, let's move on to the next one. That was $649. Back to Superpowers again. If you didn't look up Superpowers then, look it up now. Superpowers is a good toy to look for. $725 on this one. But the loose figures themselves. Now I'm going to show you loose figures today. As I said, we're showing you the ones that you could still find. This still shows up like this. Even sealed, I have found these at auctions and stuff like that too. Or at estate sale when, there was collectible toys at the sale. And you have to shell out some money. I might spend $200 or $300 on this. Just flip something like this for $600. So, you got to be ready for it. I walk in with thousands if I know there's going to be toys there. And most of these are cash, so, it's usually 2 or 3 people going just to be safe. The boys will go with my kids go. But anyway, here's another one. Now, I've run across him before, too, in big lots. He's pretty scarce. It's an original, 1994. Just those grenades and the masks and the guns can go for good money. The card, the inserts, the cut-down board, any of this stuff goes for good money. Somebody saved the back, and that's usually typical. Even the G.I. Joes, they'll save the back because it's got like a essay on the actual character. So, but this is one of the rarest ones that you'll see with the cloth, his cape and all. Because you can sell just the cloth cape as well, too, for good money. $100 you might get for that. So I know my toys. I'm big into toys. A lot of these were from my era. Anyway, now here's a good one here. I've had him a couple times too. Most people pass these by. They don't think much of them, but $537, and he's loose. On a card, he goes for way higher, like $1,000 you might expect to pay for one of him on the card. Cyborg, if you're not familiar with the series, but anyway, and he was on the late end of the series when they were starting to go out of fad. Now we're going into my favorite toy line. When I was a kid, Takara made Microman. It was one of the first Japanese toys I had ever seen. Well, I'll take that back. I saw this about the same time I saw the big giant Shogun wares and the miniature metal Shogun wares. And I always loved the Japanese one. I used to watch Go Force and or G Force, I think it was, back then. I wasn't a big Voltron fan or anything like that, but I liked the earlier ones. I was a big Ultraman fan. I was like maybe 6 or 7 when Ultraman was still playing on TV here from the late 60s. And it was the Japanese version, too. It was out of Windsor in Canada. I got that on TV here. But this is one of the Micronauts. This is an original Microman by Takara. And this is like the precursor. The figures you see driving that are basically Micronauts. And again, if you don't know what that is, open up yourself another window and do yourself a quick comp search on that, and you will see what Microman sells for, and you will be very surprised. Now, they're remaking a lot of these. Not the original versions like this, but they're remaking some of the other ones. And the Micronauts came just like this. This toy wasn't a Micronaut, and it wasn't re-released as a Micronaut, but some of the parts were like the hands and the fists and the gears and some of the pieces, because these were all interchangeable with one another. So even like some of these pieces were able to be found in other newer toys that were actually imported later on as Micronauts. But this is where Micronauts came from, if you're unaware. This isn't a Japanese only, had to have been imported. They all still look like this, like Biosphere had that same rubber around it. And some of the other ones did too, for like their tracks, rubber tracks on the feet. And they even reproduce that black belt you see in there for some of the toys, so they can still be usable. Because Micronauts had a lot of mechanical and mechanized ones that took batteries. And I loved some of the Micronauts. I had a ton of them, and we actually had them still, after I got married, and I sold them for like $3,700 for the ones that I had left, even just the parts. Now, this one here is the Holy Grail. There's only one of these ever known. It turned up. The history on this is legit. There's a big, long story on this one here. His asking price is $5,000. I'm sure it's not going to sell for that, if it does sell. This one was featured in most everything around. This is one of the original Micromans. Now, no one knows where this comes from because there was only this one. This has like been talked about for decades. And I was a Micronaut person, so I've been on the boards and I've seen the talk and even taken part in it years ago. This has been known since the 90s, like 15 or 20 years ago this one turned up. But I expect this one to go for a couple grand, honestly. Just because there aren't any out there. Yeah, I bet you somebody's going to buy it and then recast it. The bodies are the same as the Micronauts. The connections are the same, but none of the parts are the same, so it's an oddball piece here. Well, the feet look pretty much like an Acroy or like a giant Acroy or something like that, the side pieces. Again, look up Micronauts so you know what I'm talking about here a little bit. That one wasn't even ended. I just wanted you to show, because that one's something that just, if you ever see that toy again, you've got some money, because there's only one known copy, and it's thought that maybe it was a prototype, but it's too finished to be a prototype, from my opinion. And then that somebody thought it was maybe a giveaway to employees or something, which sounds more legit than anything to me. And I'm sure there'll be some more of those that show up at some point. Now, this is a foreign version. They made Micronauts in Italy. I think this is the Italian version, because I've had some of the Italian ones too. And those are worth a ton of money, because the characters they release in other countries are not available here. So this Micronaut, it's literally the Micronaut line. This figure is only available on this set from Italy. And I'm almost sure it's Italy. They might not even say. They might not even know, honestly, because people sell this stuff and don't really know the history. I've had, like, most of these. I've had a couple of these. I had one as a kid, Hornetoid, across the board, I've had almost all of them. I've had the city, the whole works, too, as well, too. And I have one of the cities that I just bought not too long ago when I've been selling it by pieces. But literally, again, they all come the same way. Really interesting. They sell extremely well, the Micronauts, any of the figures. Now, if it's a Microman, I've sold Micromans in the box without heads even, and still got $200, $300, $400 for them. So, next video, we're going to go into details again. This is going to be the last one showing you this kind of stuff. The rest is going to be parts, pieces, and smaller stuff into the couple hundred ones that you should be able to easily pull out a couple of these a month if you really dig around and look. This is a knockoff one, too, and I wanted to show this here. This is an original from the 80s. I remember when these came out, I think they were pulled off after a lawsuit, because that piece there is literally a knockoff of an Acroyer figure, as is that. And it's supposed to be an Acroyer, basically. The Acroyer had wheels, like round discs on either side, as opposed to the wings. It may have been made by the same company who made the Micronauts by Takara, but I don't believe it was. People who collect Micronauts collect these as well, too. So even if you don't see it as a Micronaut, it could be Lords of Light. So anyway. And that one was from 80. Now, this one, I've had a couple of these recently. I had them new. I've sold just the cardboard that came with this one for $45 recently. And I just showed you the last one. Now, this wing is from... the wing that you just saw was basically a copy from this figure here with this gun. But it was basically... the rest of it looked like an Acroyer. But this is a good one here. Repto, his brain glows in the dark right up here. There's a whole line. There's 3 U.S. issued aliens like this in this line. These were late in the series. The one's like a pink with a big, huge, bulbous pink brain that glows in the dark, and another one's got multiple arms. Now those you'll run across. Even if he doesn't have the hands at all, he's still worth money. And then there was one more that was from only from an overseas set that I think's blue with a tail. I don't remember the names of all of them, but I know a Micronaut when I see one. That's one thing you need to know. You need to be able to tell what type of toy it probably is just from the looks, because sometimes you can't make up the markings, or you won't know the line, or you might be buying newer toys and not even know the difference. So construction of the toys is key. Like know your vintage G.I. Joe, the 80s versions, the 3 3/4. Know what a vintage Star Wars looks like versus the newer one. They're constructed differently. The plastic's different. There's a bunch of different factors across the board. Now, this one here is an example of a Microman, but they actually make, I think it's called Star Searcher, the U.S. version. It was totally colored plainly compared to any of these. The Japanese ones were always colored with multicolored, funky colors like this, which I kind of like. It brings back, the early 70s to me. But there's a U.S. version of this too. The body itself was used basically, but the rest of it's all different. You won't see that little dome or all the little doodads on the top. It's different, but this is basically the same toy that's separated and made into several different toys. So anyway, there's different versions of these. They save money by using some of the same molds and just rehashing them a little bit and then releasing them as a Micronaut instead of the Microman. They put Micronauts in the title on these because this is the precursor to Micronauts. Takara came out with these in Japan first. They were big in Japan, and then boom, they started producing them here. I remember when the first line hit here, I was wild about them. I saved up every dime I made to just buy these. I had hundreds of them too. It was the most toys I've ever had were Micronauts when I was a kid. Let's see here. Now here's a Thundercats one. This is another one of those oddball ones that shows up occasionally. I've had people tell me it looks like Star Wars, and it does. The feet do anyway. So if you're not paying attention, you might miss the fact that it has the Thundercats Lion-O on the top there. But anyway. $800, so that's just another idea here. Now the Antword is it's a South African rap group kind of Fatty Boom Boom. Most people probably won't like that style at all. I kind of get what they're going after with apartheid and all, but not my style of music per se. Nothing wrong with it. I've listened to it many times, but they've got toy lines out too, and these go extremely well. You might find them and not even know that's what they are. They're great on the marketing. The video is actually pretty neat. It's got some not so great topic in it, but anyway, $700. Now this is something box or not box. You could still find these, from at a garage sale. And parents, selling off the kids' toys don't realize they're worth a ton of money. They weren't this expensive when they were first released. So, anyway, this one's new actually here, but there are other versions of these out. They've been out for a few years too as well. But anyway, let's move on. Now, this is a Hot Toys. Now, you need to look up Hot Toys. They're like deluxe versions with all the little doodads that can go with it. The detail is incredible. It's hard to tell the difference if you're just a novice in this area. But the minute I see a Hot Toy, I can always tell a Hot Toy versus one of the other ones. And you can pretty much tell the quality of the Hot Toys, too, by what they look like. But anyway, $700 for that one. And now here's just the bodies. Now I talk about people customizing it. This is why, because they'll just buy bodies and they'll make their own doll from it. That's what you do. And then you sculpt your own head. He just snaps on the top. It's really easy to sculpt the heads if for certain people. I'm fairly good on stuff like that. And that's why I said we are moving towards doing some of our own toys. We're not going to stop what we're doing with anything else, of course, but just another avenue to make some money. This is another one I've talked about, Medicom. Type that into, look up Medicom and Bear Brick. And that's all I'm going to say about that one. This one went for $700, and they sold 6 of them. So just keep that in mind. That's $4,200 off this toy. Obviously, they didn't pay that for it, but they probably they're adding $125 in shipping from China. That's probably like overnight air or something. Now this is more along the lines of what we plan on doing, something similar. Not like this, of course, but this stylish, but $700. And this one sells over and over again for the same price. It's small too, brand new. Just wanted to throw, this is Lily Letty. Now this is another one of those ones I've talked about. The markings on it. The markings on it mean a big difference. Unless you're looking at the markings, you're just going to sell this as a regular Yoda and not even realize that it's a scarce variety. Variety means everything in these. So again, look up everyone. Look and see on the inside of his leg or the bottom of his feet if it's marked anything different. Because one of these days you're going to be finding these all the time and then run across one that's good. So anyway. And this is just like a Tonner or a Hot Toys body that somebody bought and made up their own one. So it's custom. They did their own stuff. They got clothing from somewhere else and put it on him. Or they had it even custom made. You know, you're selling this for $900. You can afford to spend $100, you know, to have somebody custom make clothing, or $50 for clothing and $100 for the blank body, and then cast your own head. Guns can be had very easily off eBay. I'll sell every gun for a 12-inch figure that I get. You know, $10 usually on average for a decent pistol or something like that. So anyway, just keep that in mind. And I've talked about these two. This is the most common one I run into. He's not worth a ton of money, but you still see in the right condition with all the clothing and all, $685. But I pulled this one up just, it's kind of hard to see. I wish you could see it a little better. But this is literally the markings on the backs of these. 77, any of these vintage ones, glows in the dark in the head. And they even show you that he still glows. So anyway, got one more here. And here's another one. This is a set. This is a lot of them. I don't remember how many were in the lot or the actual ending price. I want to say they went for 6 or 7, 3 figures. Again, it just depends. And again, look at the title. LJN WWF. Same person, same title. It really helps them sell when you limit the information on some of these rarer items, because it draws in everybody thinking, you know, what the heck's going on here? Even if he started off at like $10, everybody's going to look at that, and you'll get a ton of bids on some of this stuff. So anyway, but that's what I have for you. Next video is going to be on the smaller, cheaper toys exclusively. I'll try not to put anything new and anything on a card in it. It'll just be loose toys for you and parts, so you can know if you pass by a gun or separate it. And the next one after that's going to be on Migos and Migos style, like Action Man and things like that, and the vintage taller G.I. Joe figures. But those are the next two. Those won't be up till next week. Tomorrow I will probably have the small action figures up, and then Wednesday, of course, is the live show at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And then I've got some interesting content for Thursday, Friday, and then we will go from there. But that's what I have for you today. Don the Auction Professor. Please hit the like button down below if you enjoyed it. You can also hit that bell icon up top to be notified when I post new content or go live. Subscribe and tell a friend.